Good afternoon. My name is Sandro Burgos, Hearing Officer for San Francisco Public Works. Cersei Waiters is the clerk of this hearing. This hearing is being recorded via Zoom and will be available afterward through a link on the San Francisco Public Works website, sfpublicworks.org. As this is a virtual hearing, there is no sign-in sheet. So if you would like to receive information about the results of this hearing, please send an email to the email address listed on the hearing notice. This public hearing is being held to consider 5 items. My job as the hearing officer is to gather the facts for the hearing items, listen to your testimonies, and help our Director of Public Works make determinations. I will not be making any decisions today. Instead, I will forward the findings from this hearing and make my recommendations to the Director. The Director will make the final determinations. When the Director's determinations are made, the department will notify you of them if you have provided contact information. The hearing will proceed as follows for the 5 cases. I will ask Public Works staff to speak first and present the case. Then I will allow the property owner or appellant or applicant to speak. Then any member of the public or witness who wants to speak. Then the department, if the department would like to address any comments. And finally, the property owner or appellant or applicant again, if the person has any rebuttals. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes to speak. The clerk will monitor the time for all speakers and will indicate when the speaker has 30 seconds left. If you are a party to this proceeding, I will call on you to speak. If you would like to use visual materials in your presentation, please let me know before you speak. You will then have the standard 3 minutes to provide your comments. If you're a member of the public or witness who wants to speak, wait for me to call for public comments. Then use Zoom's raise your hand feature if you're on a computer to put yourself in the queue to speak. If you are dialing in on your phone, dial *9 to indicate you're raising your hand. When it is your turn to speak, I will recognize you. If on your phone and you're muted, press *6 to unmute yourself. If you would like to use visual materials in presentation, please let me know before you speak. You will then have the standard 3 minutes to provide your comments. Comments and questions should be addressed to me and not to the department or the applicant. If you cannot finish your comments within the allotted time, you may submit written testimony to me by the end of this hearing. If I feel that a question is warranted, I will ask the question. After all comments are completed, I will close the item. We will now begin the hearing. At this time, we will open up the hearing to public comments. Members of the public may make comments on matters that are within the department's jurisdiction, but not on today's agenda. Are there any public comments at this time?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Just want to point out for everybody who doesn't work for the city, perhaps, that doesn't already know that San Francisco has the smallest urban tree canopy of any major city in the United States at 13.7%, which stands against the national average of 27%. Our 2014 Urban Forest Plan called for 50,000 trees by 2034. And in response to a declaration that we're in a climate emergency, our 2021 Climate Action Plan called for 40,000 trees by 2040. Last year, our Urban Forestry Council released a report which found that over the last 6 years, rather than net gain a single tree, we have lost nearly 1,300 trees net, and that's just along our streets and does not include trees in parks or on private property. Additionally, while Street Tree SF set aside $19 million a year annually to remove trees and fix sidewalks, there are $0 set aside in our city budget to actually plant and water new trees. Against the backdrop of all these urban canopy failures, our 2021 Climate Action Plan also called for policies of tree preservation in construction by 2023, wherever possible, and only when it is impossible, then to implement a basal equivalent replacement formula, which means to put in as many trees as you put in as much tree as you take out. At a Board of Appeals hearing last week, our city's urban forester agreed that simply replacing trees one for one is not enough, and committed to a basal replacement formula for a city renovation project. He did this because the Board of Appeals was appalled that we are this far behind, yet still seek to remove trees without even having examined whether preservation or an alternative was possible. To say the commissioners on this Board of Appeals reviewing that permit were appalled is actually a bit of an understatement. We are failing in our urban forest plan and our climate action plan, but there is evidence that various city entities are working to change this, and that coordinated change should be a part of every agenda item that we're here to discuss tonight. Thank you.
Are there any other public comments at this time?
Someone's at the front door.
If there are
I don't
no-
see any other hands, Mr. Burgos.
Great, thank you. If there are no other comments for this item, I'll close this item. This item is now closed. Let's see here. First item on today's agenda is order number 209012. May I have Public Works make its presentation?
Good evening. My name is Susan Nawberry. I'm an urban forestry inspector with the Bureau of Urban Forestry, and I'm representing the Bureau of Urban Forestry as a staff representative tonight. And just a few little housekeeping items. So we have a few goals with the city. So as Mr. Klips said, BUF's mission is to preserve and grow the urban forest while balancing safety needs of a growing and evolving city. And you'll definitely see that here tonight as we deal with some applications with some affordable housing projects. We don't really have any non-permit related cases tonight, but occasionally you get a removal application for that. And this is just to talk about, we also manage all of the street trees in addition to doing all this permit plan checking and essentially being the gatekeepers for every single development permit that crosses Public Works path. Any sort of new building or housing projects we must touch, in addition to maintaining every single street tree in the city of San Francisco. So as you can see, there's a lot of prioritization going on and a lot of other work we have to balance with that. And you know, the whole reason for Street Tree SF is because the citizens wanted the city to take care of the trees to our standards. And that also means approving, denying applications as we see fit. And our ordinance establishes authorization and standards for addressing these issues. The Urban Forestry Ordinance is codified under Article 16 of the Public Works Code, and it gets very complex when it comes to project mitigations, violations, and as well as kind of determining replacement and value trees, as you see in some of these applications. So it's not just one for one, it can get pretty complicated pretty quickly. And then these updates are now going on 2 years old. And we don't have a case in this hearing where we're removing a tree for Street Tree SF. These are all permit related, but if a department is removing a tree, we require a replacement report. If the tree can't be replaced, it must be replaced in a nearby location. And if a property owner or applicant is granted a removal permit for a healthy tree, we shall require replacement of the street tree of equivalent value to one that is removed or imposed in a lieu fee. And so we're doing a lot with that. And we're going to see this example tonight. The owner will pay the difference between the appraised value of the subject tree minus the value of the replacement tree. And our standard replacement tree is a 24-inch box. Our current in lieu fee, it changes every year. It's $2,431, changes every fiscal year. That is our cost to purchase, plant, and water the tree. That includes transportation of the tree and weekly visits to provide water for 3 years. And then we have these tree removal criteria. So we have primarily development related applications tonight. One application isn't development related, but it is construction related. So we have these removal criteria. outside of construction, dead or dying and not thriving. You'll see some trees that haven't grown for several years, so it's better to just replace it and start growing a tree that will put on canopy in diameter and start storing some of that carbon we want to store. And then, so in this case, one of these cases, not quite this case, but if a tree is small, less than 4 inches in diameter, that's something that can be replaced almost in kind, like a 48-inch box could be a 4-inch diameter tree. So that's close to in kind. It's in terms of ISA practice, it's called it's a traditional replacement. And then we factor in our cost for watering. Functional replacement is what it's called in our 10th edition of appraisal. And this one is the biggest reason for removal from construction, and it's if the tree would be destabilized by construction, and there's no feasible workaround that we can see, and to be fair, we're not engineers, and we definitely ask that the projects provide very clear explanations for this. Yeah, so they have to provide supporting documents saying, well, like the foundation is going to be 2 inches from the trunk of the tree. Obviously, like that's not feasible. Anywhere in the drip line of the trees is troubling for construction. Removal of 30% of roots within the drip line of the tree can be problematic. So if a tree is going to have foundation work at the base, that's usually a tree we'd consider for removal. And that's where we go into appraising the tree for removal. We don't want to necessarily approve healthy trees in construction, but if we're holding up a plan to build 100% affordable housing, we will approve a tree if foundation is going to destabilize a tree and then try to recoup the loss of that tree, rather than trying to hold on to the tree in construction, finding that the construction causes too much damage to sustain the tree, which may not be discovered for like 3 to 4 years after the construction is finished. And then by then it's too late to recoup your costs. So sometimes it's better just to prune the tree and recoup the cost up front. If it's determined that there's no other way to preserve the tree. So the property owner is required to plant a replacement tree and pay the difference between the appraised value based on our unleafy structure. And if they can't replace the tree, they'll be required to pay the entire unleafy. So our first case is 88 Maryland, and this is order 209012. And this is to consider removal permit 794622 88 Maryland Street for the removal of 7 street trees with replacement. And the trees are part of the Pier 70 development agreement, and there's a new vertical development. And it gets a little complicated because, the project planted these trees, the Pier 70 project actually planted these trees. This is owned by the port. It's the port's jurisdiction, but then the port develops these lots and says, like, look at these new streets and trees, and like this is a place you can develop. So developers come, it looks attractive, and then this empty lot on the right here, you can see right next to the trees, and there's no utilities in place. So then the project comes in and says, well, we're building this housing project, and now we need to trench along the trees, which will destabilize these trees and cause a lot of damage to these young trees. And as I mentioned earlier, so these trees have a 3.5-inch caliper. And so that's kind of equivalent to what a 36-inch box tree is. And so we scale up our Inlufi, which is called functional replacement. So it's really between a 36-inch box and a 48-inch box. So the applicant has agreed to replace with 48-inch box trees. And these are 7 trees. So these trees that you're looking at, when I first saw them a few years ago, they were about half the size. They've now grown to what I would consider the size of a 48-inch box in their 3-stalk tree, which is something that's about 3.5 to 4 inches in caliper. And therefore, our inspector approves this removal in that because the applicant agreed to replace the trees in kind. We also made sure that this basically, like, the trees are very uniform, so it's the same, they look like the same photos over and over again, but it's all 7 trees. They're in good condition. Like, otherwise, if it weren't for this trench, we wouldn't have approved them if it was something that could be worked around. And yes, so if for some reason the project can't plant 48-inch box, we've determined our in lieu fee, I was saying, that's $2,431. When you scale that up for a 48-inch box tree, that in lieu fee is $6,740. So if they say they can only plant a 24-inch box tree, we'll subtract the value of a 24-inch box tree, $2,431, from $6,740, and they'll have to pay the difference for each tree that's not a 48-inch box. So we intend to recoup the loss either monetarily or in kind or both. So yeah, that's why we were approved 88 Maryland, and that concludes our presentation for this order.
Thank you, Susan. Next, does the property owner, appellant, or applicant wish to speak?
Yes, this is Jamie Choi with King Street Properties. I'm the property owner. Thank you for having us. I honestly don't have anything to add. Susan, that was very a very good summary, and we appreciate your attention to this. I'm here to answer any questions if they come up, but I don't have anything else to add.
Thank you, Jamie. Does any member of the public or witness want to speak? Yeah, we'll go with you, Josh.
Thanks. You can hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so I've lost track of how many times I've heard either the city's urban forester or even the city's now director of public works talk about why we're planting ginkgos all over San Francisco. The reason, according to the Department of Public Works, is that ginkgos are so incredibly climate resilient, that these are exactly the kinds of trees that we need to be planting and growing and preserving for our climate future. And don't ask me that comes from Public Works. The reason that they are so climate resilient is because they grow so slowly. And the fact that these ginkgos look as good as they do is astonishing when you consider how much work it takes for them, how much time it takes for them to establish and look that good. So here we've got these 7 healthy, well-established trees that the city preaches we ought to be planting, but now we're going to take them out for construction and construction for conflicting infrastructure on a completely empty lot. How much work was done to see if we could actually save these trees that we cannot save 7 trees on an entirely empty lot? If we can't save, if our city and our development projects cannot come up with a way to save 7 healthy trees, ginkgo trees that are the equivalent of a 48-inch box size, what are we doing? Where is the policy of preservation at all? This doesn't make any kind of, it certainly doesn't show that there was any kind of good faith effort to work around this established now basically small ecosystem down in an area that has, we said San Francisco has 13.7%. That includes, by the way, the Presidio. So you're talking about an area here that's probably got about a 4% canopy. It's kind of a shame. It looks like we did no work to actually look at preserving these trees. And don't affordable housing projects deserve established trees anyway. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Any other members of the public like to speak? John?
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, John.
Okay, great. Yes, the port, which is another part of San Francisco, has control of this property, and they don't seem to want to deal with greening San Francisco and keeping it green. And so these trees, you could see the width of the sidewalk to the fence is a good there's 20 feet there between the curb and the side and the fence. So therefore, these root system probably will not be disturbed by the construction because they would probably be building up to the fence and because they also need a walkway. And if they're putting in any proposed trees after they build, again, you still need a walkway and you still need tree basins. So I didn't hear anything about the requirement by the city because this has a lot. I'm not sure if it has a back lot to it too. How many trees for the whole tree plan for the whole property would be being put in? That was never discussed in the presentation. So because by planning code, every 20 feet. So I don't hear about more trees going in. I only hear about the trees being removed. So, and they could be reserved. I would prefer they be reserved. I would want them a wraparound for them to keep them preserved and make sure they stay safe during construction. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Any other members of the public?
I don't see any other hands at this time.
Thank you. The department may now address any comments if the department would like.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Nolte. Indeed, they will be required to fulfill requirements under 806D beyond this specific requirement. If they can't plant more trees, they will be required to pay the in lieu for those specific trees. The reason why we didn't talk about 806D in this case is because it's the minimum they're required to do beyond having to deal with this removal. But I will keep that in mind for the future presentation because we will be assessing fees and we're required to in our building permit process. It can't leave our hands without us making some kind of impact note.
Thank you, Susan.
Mr. Burgos, there was a hand for Maya Nagasaka. Let me ask, and then it disappeared. Did you want to speak?
Yes, I just wanted to add to this. We are the landscape architect working with the owner that we are, the port has a requirement to using specifying California native plants. So despite that there are ginkgo trees, which was already determined by the city that it be replaced with the same species. We do have 94% of California native plants throughout the perimeter of the, on the grounds and also on the terraces and roof patios. So just wanted to add that to this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Maya. Any other public comments, Charisse?
I do not see any other hands at this time.
Great. Finally, does the property owner or want to state a rebuttal?
I do not. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no more comments for this item, I will now close the item and will make my recommendations to the director. All right, item's closed. The second item on today's agenda is order number 209013. May I have Public Works make its presentation?
So we had to reschedule this one because we did not mean to schedule it for this hearing. It's still posting for public comment. So we will schedule it next month. So I don't have the presentation for this, but that means anybody who wants to speak on it next month has a head start on their public comments and any protests. It was protested, which is why we had it listed for a hearing, but we did not mean to schedule it for this month. But we accidentally created the order, so we needed to publicly say that we have rescheduled it. I think you still take public comment on it, but we wouldn't make a resulting decision for this because we've rescinded the order. So it wouldn't end up in any sort of decision. So it'd probably be better for public comment to be saved for next month.
Sure, yeah, that's fine with me. Sharice, do you have any opinions on that matter or on the procedural?
No, if anyone does want to speak, they could raise their hand, but we could also take written testimony. And I did, or written comments, I'm sorry. And I did put the email address in the chat also.
Okay, sounds good. So yes, please, if you have any comments on this order number, please provide written response to the email provided. Moving on to the third item on today's agenda, order number 209014. Susan, would you like to make presentation?
So in this case, we're considering the removal of 9 street trees with replacement, and 4 of the street trees are adjacent to 147 Minna, and the other 5 are adjacent to 147 Natoma. This is a city project, but Public Works needs to submit a permit to itself because it's construction management versus for Bureau of Urban Forestry. So Bureau of Urban Forestry actually manages the permit process. So we do have a permit number, and there's going to be a bunch of repaving and sidewalk work and addition to other utility work. And these trees also happen to be in pretty poor condition. They're calorie pears, which are really prone to fire blight. So on the plan up above, those are the 4 trees at Minna, I believe. Yes. And then the plan below is Natoma. And so those are the 5 trees. And let's see, this is the spec. It's kind of unique. Because it's a city project and there's special funds allocated to it, we're able to build the basins in such a way where we're able to plant an narrow sidewalk. There isn't funding to do this across the city. For example, if there's a 6-foot sidewalk with a 2-foot basin, we can't just stick a tree in that normally, because usually the tree outgrows that basin and causes sidewalk damage, and then the sidewalk damage has to be repaired, and there isn't enough space to expand the basin to save the tree. In this case, they're putting down on the lower right-hand corner of this rectangle, they're putting down like a 6-inch iron sort of grate, but only along one side. So it's kind of creating like a level sidewalk. So it's going to be like a 6-foot sidewalk with like a 3-foot basin, but with this 6-foot strip. So it's been approved by our ADA coordinator and the director because they want to see these trees replaced. But they are widening the sidewalks beyond what's there. There's new bulb outs, and there'll be raised crosswalks. This is an area that has a lot of pedestrian foot traffic in downtown Soma. So it is somewhere where we do want to see pedestrian improvements. So there will be several improvements, but as this case pertains to us, the amount of construction that will occur around these trees, and given that they're in fairly poor condition, it's worth it to us to get replacement trees here instead. So this is one of the calorie pairs. It's been vandalized. They also get, like I said, fire blight, which is a fungus that affects pears. Pears are a tree that primarily grow on the East Coast, and they get what's called a lot of chill hours, and a lot of deciduous trees need chill hours for their buds to break. It's a chemical reaction that causes like the starch in the buds to break and then generates new leaves. And if it's not cold enough or doesn't get enough, they don't get enough hours of cold weather, their buds won't break and they won't leaf out. So you see a lot of like very bare sort of pear trees around the city. We got very lucky with really cold temperatures and rain last year where some of these trees did bud break. But you know, long term, California is pretty much always in a drought. We have a changing climate, and calorie pairs are really not adapted to it. So every single tree will be replaced. So personally, I would like to see a better tree go in here, because this tree is not going to make it in the long run. This is another calorie pair, and I don't think this one was vandalized. I think that was a carryover from the other one, but basically you can see the lower canopy is really sparse. So that means like the last several years it hasn't been able to put any new growth. So all the canopy you see at the top of the tree is new growth from that really cold, wet winter we got last year. And unfortunately, it looks like we're going to get a warmer, wet winter this year, which is not ideal for a tree from the East Coast that needs a lot of chill hours. And so we really try not to plant like deciduous trees from the East Coast that need these chill hours. But you know, in the 80s and 90s, you know, we had a lot of landscape architects from the East Coast that brought their species palettes with them, and we're still dealing with that in the city. And it's kind of the standard for architecture, and we're trying to get away from that. So here's another. This looks more like an evergreen pear. I suppose it is a calorie pear. That's smaller, so it's probably had more growth over the last two wet winters. But again, as we exit that cold El Nino La Nina cycle, and now we're in an El Nino cycle, and as we potentially enter more droughts, as we saw in 2011 through 2017, we're going to start to see trees like this decline. And so we'd like to use these capital improvement funds to get the trees. Those capital improvement funds don't come very often. It comes with these road and street improvements. And so they're dedicating funds to plant new trees that will put on new growth and ultimately be more climate resilient. And again, all these trees can be replaced. I believe they're planting 24-inch box trees at a minimum. And then again, this is another tree that's very sparse, and all the growth is at the end, indicating that most of its canopy was put on in the recent years when they had really cold weather, and they were able to have what's called the bud break. So in California, we like to have trees that have low chill hours, trees that don't need very many hours of cold. These trees need like a 5-degree winter for several months. We just don't have that here. So again, there's also going to be new irrigation lines put here, and that's kind of in the root zone. Although, unfortunately, I'd wager that these trees probably have a pretty small root area based on how poor their growth is. And okay, yeah. So I guess these trees have all been vandalized. They just started to sprout sort of lower down. It kind of hides it. But a tree like this, if you were to keep this and then grow it, all of the branches sort of arise at this vandalized point. And calorie pears are they are very, very prone to failure. they tend to split and drop their limbs. And again, luckily we don't have winds like the East Coast have, although we did have that, hurricane last winter. But these are the types of trees that tend to split and fail in those kinds of winters. California pears are very prone to that. So we're happy to have a tree that A, doesn't fail, and B, can tolerate our California climate. So it's 9 tree, and then here's another tree. I'm sorry, I just keep showing you trees in this condition. It's to emphasize the fact that these trees are really in poor condition, and we have an opportunity to get, 24-inch box is about the same size as this tree, and it'll be healthy and climate resilient. So yeah, and this one's a 4-inch diameter, so I think they're planting more than just the 9, but elsewhere. But you know what? In reality, it's possible that they may plant a 48-inch box. So we will have to discuss that with the project. Because I now realize that, this was listed as a 4-inch box, a 4-inch tree. So it would be fair to get a larger box size here, but at the same time, a smaller box size will establish better with less water. So that concludes the order for 147 Minna and Natoma, and why we want to approve the removal of these trees for replacement.
Thank you. Next is the property owner wishes to speak. Seeing no hands raised, we'll move on. Does any member
For
of
the project holder, does the project holder? The project holder is the city. That's why I say that.
Anybody wish to speak on behalf of that? Or I guess that would be you, Susan. All right. Any member of the public or witness want to speak on this case? Yes, John.
Good evening. It was not discussed that this is city property, this is a parking lot. And on the Natoma side, it's not a through street. So therefore, I don't see why more trees can't go in. And also this is a neglect of the city being a city parking lot, and that it is because this is a storied up a parking lot that the city has neglected to take care of its own trees. And then here we come along with a streetscape to enhance two sides of the parking lot, just to, I don't know, I'm not clear why, to waste money on a streetscaping project for a parking lot, which to me, one street you don't even go through. So I don't understand what's the streetscaping project for. It's the city giving money to itself. So therefore, I would just reject it on the part of the city handing money over to itself for a parking lot that the city already owns. So therefore, this doesn't make any sense to me as a taxpayer to have the parking lot streetscapes when you see that the sidewalks are pretty clean. You've got nothing was discussed about the whether or not you can be putting back the steel around the bottom and the side around the sides of the trees that are currently there. That costs money. That's additional money that may be lost in the replanting if you're going to replant. So I have a lot of questions about this project because it didn't come to the community, because it's the city making a decision for itself. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Are there any other public comments? Josh?
Yeah, thanks. You can hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks. I want to thank Public Works for putting some effort into subgrade tree basins here that can support trees in what we know is a challenging environment in the south of Market in the downtown area. And I would hope to see more of that citywide, and not just in city projects, but also in downtown and Soma and Tenderloin area development projects. Also, I want to just commend and point out Public Works' use of these grates to expand the tree basin while simultaneously achieving disability access. Comes up all over in all kinds of removals, this supposed conflict between green and disability access. And as somebody who is a disability access consultant, it frustrates me to no end that the city does not seem to seek out and implement more innovative solutions. And yet here is one, and this is great. And I would love to see this type of solution in tree basins all over the city, especially since so many sidewalk trees are considered not replaceable due to sidewalk width requirements. And then just a final note that in this agenda item, we are talking about the importance of planting climate resilient species. And yet in the previous agenda item, where we actually have 7 healthy, thriving, climate resilient species in existence, that did not seem to bear consideration in the discussion around their removal. So, and I would, at some point, maybe if it's in the decision or wherever, would love to hear more about the species that would be planted here. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other, oh, Michael?
Yes, Michael Nulty, N-U-L-T-Y. I'm the executive director of Alliance for a Better District 6, and I'm speaking on behalf of my organization. You know, we see a lot of times when the city wants to do something, it has the will and it does it, and whether or not it actually goes to the community and has any public hearings. And as one of the speakers had said before, this is if it's a city park, if this is a city garage for parking, and you know, the foot traffic would be going to the in and out of the actual entrance for the garage. And we're, you know, it seems to me, you know, only a couple of the pictures that were presented in this presentation actually show, like this last one, the notice for removal. So wondering if how many of the notices for removal were still up before this hearing, and how prepared the community was to be notified about all the trees that were being removed. It just seemed to be redundant that all the trees were in poor condition during this presentation, when they seem to be each one in different development, you know, different, each picture looked different, but yet every one of them basically said the same thing in the presentation. So it was obviously saying, you know, redundancy. We have to remove these things. These trees have obviously gone through a bunch of, in other words, nothing was said about that they were a hazard. And you know, trees, they're not considered hazards, don't need immediate replacement. How can we better plan who was responsible for choosing the tree to begin with? How long has the tree actually been there? Of these trees, they obviously were planted at the same time. And this is another example of either you know, the project being taken over by a process that planted the wrong kind of trees because of you know, as the San Francisco Public Works was saying, that the trees need, these specific species need a certain kind of climate. So there's just a bunch of issues that obviously when you get into the minutia of tree planting that I have concerns about. And
30 seconds.
our organization would like to see better planning and actually more trees in our in our neighborhood and district, because we seem to be keeping on removing them but not adding them into our district. So I would like to see more trees in the surrounding adjacent areas planted if you were removing all these trees during this hearing, since many of the projects are in District 6. And I was amazed that you didn't talk about the previous item more in depth for the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Any other public comments on this agenda item?
I don't see any other hands at this time.
Thank you. Would the department like to address any comments? Great. If there are no more
Unless
comments,
any of the project holders felt like they needed to address any of the comments. I thought some of the project holders were on.
so if there are no more comments for this item, I will close the item and make my recommendations to the director. The item is now closed. Moving on to the fourth item on today's agenda is order number 209015. May I have Public Works make its presentation?
Yes, so this is to consider the Transway Block 2 redevelopment, and it's removal of 5 significant trees inside the property and 8 street trees with replacement. 5 street trees are located adjacent to 274 main frontage of the 200 Folsom property, and 3 street trees and 1 significant tree are on the 200 Folsom Street frontage. 4 significant trees are at 299 Beale. Staff approved the removal and the public protested, and the permit number is 794670. This is a rendering of the project, and there are trees here, but it's very light on my screen, so I apologize. But the standard for Folsom and the Transway project, which has been in planning for many years, is that there's supposed to be a double row of Brisbane box on Folsom. And so this is the rendering of the project. And I'm sorry, it's the removal of 13 trees, but it's with replacement on their application. It's with replacement of 36 trees. The requirement in our code, based on their frontage, is 29 trees. So so that's what they submitted on their application, and we effectively approved the removal of 13 trees on the basis that they'll replace it with 36 trees. And again, this is the rendering. And then Folsom has a lot of pedestrian improvements, bulb outs. Believe there's going to be a 2-way bike lane there, so there's a lot of changes going on at Folsom Street, and it's 100% affordable housing. So it's not like a partial market rate, it's 100%, it's senior housing. So again, more of the renderings, and there's 2 different buildings going in. And this is their replacement plan, although species are always subject to change because of nursery stock availability. But there is a Transway species palette. And you can see on the lower part of the screen is the double row of Lofosman on Folsom. And then the removals, on 200 Folsom Street, it's a Brisbane box that's 8 inches. That tree can be replaced, although not in its exact spot. It'll be moved over to maybe close to its exact spot, because there'll be a double row of Lofosman, so then there'll be 2 Lofosman instead of 1 here. But right now, based on the way the building is built and the utilities laid out within the constraints of building this much housing. This tree needs to be removed because you can see behind this green fencing it's like what we call the construction pit. And it's where they have to do a bunch of excavation to put in the footings for the building. And you can see that it's right up against the tree basin because these trees are planted at the back of the sidewalk, which is kind of odd. But if you go to Folsom in the Transway area, you see this all over, and they planted trees in advance of the buildings being built, just like the port did. A lot of these properties be owned by the state redevelopment agency, and it's the same idea that they want to redevelop these areas to attract developers to build housing and more previously tech buildings, but now more importantly housing. And the redevelopment agency is effectively now the city's OCII. And so that's why you see a lot of these trees planted in these empty lots. And this one has a guy wire coming out of the basin. I mean, similarly, it's a Brisbane box. It's in good condition. It's an 8-inch diameter tree, but the base of that tree is right up against the foundation area. Similarly with this tree, again, and then these palm trees, which are significant trees. Palm trees are tricky. Their value is A, based on the market, and B, the amount of clear trunk they have, and C, any presence of disease. These tend to get pink rot. So these ones might have it based on the upper part of the trunk. I should have zoomed this in, but it's a little uneven, and that's evidence of a little bit of rot. But we'll have to look more closely. To us, they have these green fronds, they're healthy, so we're going to consider that a tree that just needs to be replaced with a healthy tree, and it can be replaced. This is a Tilia cordata, and they look really good right now. They're also another tree that needed a lot of chill hours, but we got a really good winter last year. The more appropriate replacement for Tilia cordata is Tilia tomentosa, so that's probably going to be the species that replaces them. They're much more adapted to San Francisco climate. And again, it's another tree in good condition, but it's planted in the back of the sidewalk here. And like Mr. Hulte said, it's tree in good condition, slide with a tree in good condition, but as you can see from this transparent green cloth, it's against the foundation of the new building. Let's see. And so sorry, this is a little out of order. This is the other significant palm tree that's getting removed. They're right next to each other. And then there's a Washington hawthorn that's a significant tree that needs to be removed for the construction. And the significant trees are inside the building footprint. So those don't count towards the street tree replacement requirement. But that all gets worked out in our 806D building permit requirements. And another significant Washington hawthorn, which I think is also in good condition. And yeah, again, the replacement plan, unfortunately, we discovered on Friday, if you look at the right-hand side of the screen, we clouded out tree number 25. So that tree has been illegally removed by the contractor. After this hearing is resolved, we'll be issuing a fine. The fine for illegal removal is about $10,000, or the appraisal, whichever is greater. And the contractor stated that the freeway piles need to be removed to avoid significant cost increases due to the need to remobilize pile removal equipment. My understanding of that translation is demobilizing, stopping the project and remobilizing would likely cost more than the fine value of the tree. However, the fine isn't just $10,000, it's the equivalent diameter replacement, and the trees they're required to plant or have already agreed to plant don't count towards that mitigation for the fine. So it might not be less, but that has to be dealt with by the inspector who is working on issuing the fine. So I just want to be very transparent, and we're disappointed that the tree was removed, that we couldn't resolve this situation in time for the tree to be removed within our process and our code, and that the public didn't get a chance to speak on the removal of tree number 25 here on the plan, which might be. Which is this tree, this Tilia here. And so you can see that there's these old freewood pylons. So the construction had already begun, and this tree is going to become destabilized, but they need to remove that pylon that's circled there. And in order to get the heavy equipment there, and without demobilizing their construction, they removed the tree. And we discovered this just on Friday, so this is kind of new information to us too. And I understand that the protesters didn't know that this tree had been removed, and yeah, we're looking to deal with this as we move forward through the project. That concludes the presentation for 200 Folsom Street. And if you have any questions, especially that kind of last part, I'm here.
Susan, what is a significant tree?
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant to explain that. A significant tree is a tree that is within private property, but it's within 10 feet of that property line. So if you look sort of to the left of this plan, and these trees that are circled, one says 11, one says 555, 554, those are within 10 feet of the property line, but they're in private property. And I believe it around 2005 or 2008, the Board of Supervisors determined that street trees, they're so close to the right of way, they're so impactful to the streetscape that they deserve and mandated protection. And they don't just make these ordinances because they feel like it. They make these ordinances because the citizens ask for it. Same with our fine. Like the citizens have mandated that trees be protected, and the citizens mandate that the fines be issued if trees are removed. In this case, it was a street tree that was removed, not a significant tree, but indeed these significant trees on private property, they don't count towards street tree replacements. Like they're kind of apples and oranges, but they do have protections. We don't maintain them because they're on private property, and they have to meet a certain size criteria, which these did.
Great, thank you. All right. Does the property owner or applicant wish to speak? Sean?
Yes, hi. Thank you for taking the time to hear this project. I do also have a presentation I shared with BUF earlier. I'm not sure if I can share that or if I should just go through.
Sure. If you would like to share it, I can promote you to a panelist right now, and then you can have those capabilities.
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, just a moment. You'll see a message and it'll prompt you.
Perfect. And Carrie Rosinski from Plural is also on the call. Carrie is our landscape architect and can speak to the tree planting plan. So could you, I'll have the slides, but could you add her as a speaker as well?
Sure, I can do
Thank
that.
you.
Okay,
Perfect.
just a moment.
Perfect. Thank you. Join us. All right. Can y'all hear me? Can y'all see me?
Yes, we can see you and hear you. And
Perfect.
then I asked Carrie to unmute.
Yes, I'm here.
There you go. Okay.
Great. And can you see the
Yep.
the slides?
Not yet.
Can you have a little bit more volume, Carrie, please?
Yes, I can. I was talking softly. I'll talk
Oh,
louder.
okay. There you go. Thank you.
We can hear you now.
Yeah. So once you begin, Sean, when you begin sharing and speaking, then I'll begin the timer.
Great. And how much time do I have?
You will have 3 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, now we can see your screen.
Perfect. Well, I'll make it quick. Thank you everyone for hearing this today. So here's another rendering of our project. On the left side of the screen, you can see Transbay Block 2 East. On the other side, you can see Transbay Block 2 West. The east side is being developed by Mercy Housing, and the west side is being developed by CCDC, or Chinatown Community Development Center. You can also see here, not only are there trees on the street, but we'll be installing some trees on our terrace as well. So contributing to the green landscape, the green urban landscape is a priority for our organizations, Mercy and CCDC. This isn't a first for either organization when it comes to planting new trees. Expanding greenery and combating climate change are integral components of the scope, scale, and design of the project. And we're also, it's worth noting, on track to achieve the highest green point rating possible, which is the San Francisco equivalent of LEED rating. So this is a 100% affordable housing development. Across the two buildings, we have 335 units, serving extremely low income to very low income families, seniors, and people formerly experiencing homelessness. It is an OCI funded project. And on the east side, we are also being funded by the state HCD agency through their Affordable Housing Sustainable Communities Fund. That's a fund that awards money to affordable housing projects that are doing a lot to mitigate climate change and reduce greenhouse gas emissions over the next 55 years. Per their formula, we're going to take off the equivalent of over 200 million vehicle miles traveled off the roads. That's just for the east side. So the existing conditions for the site, a lot of the building footprint, as Susan was discussing, here's the existing site. You can see some of the trees. Here's the aerial. Here's some of the existing conditions here. The building is going to be built on top of utilities, such as and there's going to be PG&E electric vaults, conduits. Shoring requires tree removal. There's ground improvements that will require tree removal. And like Susan was mentioning, there's trees within the footprint of the building. We've looked at every possible option to keep the trees here that we're trying to remove, and there's no option to build a project without removing the existing trees. If we could retain them within the construction of the building, we would have, but we're unable to do so. I think I'm getting short on time, so I'll pass it over to Carrie in a moment. But I also want to note our arborist is on the phone, Roy, and we can answer any questions. Let's see. Here's the tree planting plan. I'll pass it over to Carrie.
Yeah,
Okay.
Susan. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say you do each have 3 minutes to
Oh.
speak, but you had 30 seconds. But if you were
Well,
ready to,
over to Carrie anyways.
okay, go ahead. Okay, go
Okay.
ahead.
Some of this, I'm Carrie Rybczynski with Plural. We're the landscape architects on the project. And some of this Susan already covered, but I thought I'd just summarize that, our project here this is the plan view. You see the senior building on the left, on the west side, and the family building on the east side. Again, all affordable housing, and the footprint is kind of that gray area you're seeing. So we've outlined in pink, kind of that pink dash line of the trees that we're proposing to remove to be able to build the two different housing projects. And I just wanted to note that we've been working with OCII, Public Works, PUC, the MOD, PG&E, all of the entities to try to fulfill the 2006 Transbay Redevelopment Streetscape and Open Space Plan, which Susan had touched on, outlines kind of the tree species and canopy that is desired for this neighborhood. So we've talked about that we have 13 trees that we're requesting that are regulated trees that are either in streetscape or significant trees. And then through the proposed trees that will be regulated in the future are outlined here as well. There's 36 trees that we're proposing. There's the double row of trees of the Brisbane box on Folsom Street. We have the 3 trees on Beale Street, which are the Tilia. Along Clementina, the tree is the Ginkgo biloba, the Princeton Century, which is outlined as part of the master plan as a continuation of what's happening on the blocks east and west of here along Clementina. And then on Main Street, we also have 4 trees along there of the sweet gums. And I think I forgot to mention the couple of trees on Folsom Street, those kind of darker gray blue, which are within the rain garden. So that's total of 36. And then we also wanted to mention on this level 1 kind of ground level improvement, we have additional 21 trees that we're proposing several of them along the frontage of Clementina. And then down the middle of the project, which we're calling the Muse, those red trees there are Acer palmatums. And then we have more ornamental magnolia tree, and then we have some boxleaf azara.
30 seconds.
Okay, tucked in there. So in summary, we're requesting to remove 13 trees, planting 57 trees on this level 1. Obviously, as Sean talked about, we have trees that are on some of the upper levels as well. So it's a 23 tree net gain of trees that are regulated, and then 44 net gain of trees from the existing condition.
Thank you, Kay. If I could just add in the remaining few seconds we've got. We've investigated relocating some of the trees as well. And our arborist report, and Roy can speak more to this, shows that it's going to be very difficult to do that. But we certainly want to make sure that we can preserve the trees if we can. So we will, further investigate and explore it if that's possible. I can also speak to the tree removal if I have any more time.
The time has expired. Thank you.
Well, we can take that question about it and respond to that. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Sean and Carrie. Does any member of the public or witness want to speak?
Mr. Burgos, there is another hand from, what is that name? I'm sorry. I'm trying to find it. Okay. Elizabeth Colomelos.
Okay. Elizabeth, the floor is yours.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Colomello. I'm the housing program manager at OCII. I just wanted to weigh in and thank you all for hearing this issue, and just state that maximizing trees on the site and wherever possible preserving the ones that exist has been really important to us. It's important. It's something we want to do for our residents, for the housing when it's built. We worked, I think it was mentioned, but we worked really closely with PG&E to kind of minimize some of their restrictions that were minimizing the number of trees we could have on site. So I think we've done a very good job of increasing the number of trees on the site, and just wanted to highlight how important that is to us with we've nearly tripled the amount of trees on the site. We're very sorry about the ones we're not able to keep on site. And I just wanted to say regarding the tree removal, we're very sorry that happened. And at OCII, we're looking at ways that we can help our developers, not just through the tree removal process, but what to do when there's unforeseen circumstances that happen on site to ensure that the proper process is followed. So we'll be looking at our processes internally and making sure that we work with and let our developers know in advance and contractors how to deal with these situations so we don't land here again in the future. But just wanted to highlight how important these projects are for us. They're over 330 units of affordable family and senior housing. So we're really excited about them, and just wanted to weigh in with our support and thanks.
Therese, any other comments from the project team?
I don't see any other hands. We only have hands from the members of the public.
Okay, thank you. All right. So if there are members of the public who would like to speak, Josh.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thanks. Yeah, in all the years that I've worked to save trees, I've yet to see a single Mercy affordable housing project that managed to build a project and save a tree that were on site. And I wish that were hyperbole, but unfortunately it's not. And it's a super bummer because people who need affordable housing also need and deserve established tree canopy, not just little saplings that offer minimal benefits. I've been a tree planting leader with Friends of the Urban Forest for over 13 years. And it's all those years of volunteering my time on Saturday mornings that's taught me viscerally how important it is to preserve the trees that make it. This past Saturday, in fact, I spent 4 hours in the pouring rain and, among other things, planted 4 little leaf linden trees out in the Excelsior. And now to come here tonight and see that a construction company just plowed over a healthy linden tree, frankly, it makes me wonder why I even bother. It makes me feel a little sick to my stomach. And this especially in the Soma, where the tree canopy averages between a pathetic 2% and 4%. Whether to break the law and do an illegal tree removal should not be a cost-benefit analysis for a construction company. And if the construction company thinks that they saved themselves demobilization costs by illegally removing a tree, perhaps they're unfamiliar with the appeals process. And speaking of the appeals process, in 2019, I appealed a tree removal permit that OCII sought for a previous aspect of this same Transbay project, and I settled that appeal in exchange for certain trees staying in place. And relevant to this hearing tonight, OCII agreed to implement certain policies around future tree removals and replacements. And based on what I've heard tonight, I have not heard the fulfillment of those policy promises. So I'd like to know if anyone from OCII on the call can speak to whether those precise policies that we agreed on were implemented for this proposed removal, or if anyone from OCII even knows what I'm talking about. And if OCII doesn't know what I'm talking about, then it sounds like they may have violated the agreement that they made with me in exchange for withdrawing that appeal in 2019. And this all seems like something the city ought to look into in deciding whether or not to issue this permit, and if so, what conditions should apply based on the city's previous agreement with me. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Is there another member of the public who wishes to speak? John?
Good evening. As stated before, Mercy Housing has been building buildings in San Francisco for over 50 years. And they have yet to learn how to keep trees in their project. Case in point, you just look at the projects they have done and a list of them in San Francisco that they have built in the last, say, 20 years to show that they don't care about trees, but they will have fun putting them in and then adding to them the balconies and the roof and so forth to make it look like, well, that's, we're giving some greenery to this project. Well, but that's, the public don't get to go use the balconies and the roof and the gardens and anything else they may put into the project. The only thing we see is the sidewalks. So therefore, saying you're helping the project, maybe you are, the residents, but you're not helping the general public to enjoy those trees anywhere else on the property. And also, since CCD is also on this, they have also had a very bad track record too, because again, as a nonprofit, and you have two nonprofits here, choosing to which side, building two different buildings, but collaborating with the use of the outside contractors on this project. So I have a problem with the collusion that's going on between the nonprofit here and also not fulfilling what needs to be done for the whole city, and not just to add to our stock for affordable housing supposedly. And I'm not clear about if they really are affordable, because I know both of them they're not necessarily affordable to people that have low incomes, really low incomes, under 120% AMI. So I question when they use the word affordable, is it really affordable? And also some of the things they've done in the past shows their own track record. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Are there any other members of the public? Michael?
Hi, my name is Michael Nulty, N-U-L-T-Y, and in the past I've been on a Mercy Housing Development Advisory Committee, so I'm aware of sometimes the problems that exist in developing properties. I have some, first I'd like to know because we're stuck on the site 4, 274 Main Street picture, the picture of the project that was removed. Is that a CC? Well, I mean, that's fine. I mean, leave it where it was. But the thing was that a CCDC project that was where the tree was removed, or a Mercy Housing tree that was removed? I'd like to have that be spoke to at this hearing, and not just a bunch of graphics. Obviously, anybody that's putting together a project has to put together graphics and present these to the developers and eventually the planning commission and everybody else. So obviously, kudos for having some graphics, but normally during the presentation at the planning commission, for example, to talk about tree removals and pictures of the trees that are being removed are not mentioned at the planning commission. And usually even to the public at the very beginning of, pointing out that, we're going to have some great development and we're going to have all this new housing be put in at a location. And again, this is another project within District 6. And yes, we do need more senior housing and family housing in San Francisco. And but when you put in more housing, you also have to have all the amenities that they need to support, such as the sewer systems, the trees, other amenities. How close is it to public transit, parking, which I didn't really hear any discussion about, is the parking. Anyway, I'm just really concerned about sometimes how things transpire. So I see it's the family housing that was where the tree was removed from, and so I'm a little confused. Is that the CCDC or the
30 seconds.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Any other members of the public wish to speak?
Mr. Burgos, I do not see any other hands from the members of the public. However, Ms. Colomelo did ask if she could respond to the clarifying about the affordability. Did you want me to give her permission to speak?
Yes, so they'll have an opportunity to speak after the department addresses any comments that they would like to.
Okay, thank you.
If there are no other public comments, Susan, would you like to address any comments made?
Well, Mr. Nolte asked what side, and I believe the east side is where the trees are moved. And I believe the developer is Mercy. But I believe the contractor is Swinnerton for both, and the removal was planned by the contractor Swinnerton. So I'm sorry I didn't make that clear before. That's all.
Thank you, Susan. All right, now does the project team want to respond to any comments?
You can go ahead and speak, Ms. Colomello. I unmuted you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I wanted to address two comments that came up. One, I am aware of the 2019 agreement made that Mr. Klipp referenced, and we did we did meet the goals of that agreement. There was a training done for all of our project management staff on the tree removal process. We do work with our developers to make sure that and on everything that can be done to save trees. And we work with our developers, as we did on this project, to do our best to preserve as many trees as possible and to properly follow the process. I just wanted to, say again, very sorry for the what the contractor did here. That was not with we did not sanction that or suggest that was okay. So wanted to be clear about that. And I also wanted to clarify the AMIs. The senior building has AMIs from 15% AMI to 50% AMI. So we really are trying to target very low income seniors. We have an operating subsidy to help us do that. And we have also units set aside for formerly homeless households, and the same at the family. We go from 30% AMI in the family building all the way up to 80, but it's averaging closer to 50 or 60% AMI. And we also have permanent housing set aside, supportive housing set aside for formerly homeless households there. So we really try very hard to have very deep affordability at different levels in all of our housing. And these projects are no different. So I did want to clarify this is truly deeply affordable housing.
Great. Any other comments from the project team? Carrie?
Yes, I just wanted to add, there was a comment about the trees only on the streetscape being able to enjoyed by the public. So one thing I failed to note when we were looking at the site plan is that middle space, the mews and the courtyard are spaces that are open to the public. So that's a public, easement that's moving through there. And so those spaces along with the streetscapes are open for all. That was it.
Thank you, Carrie. Sean?
Hi, thank you. Thank you everyone for your questions and comments. I also, Sean here from Mercy, also just want to say we made a mistake, and we're very sorry that we removed the tree early. And I also just want to note it wasn't a cost benefit analysis question or response. It wasn't, paying demobilization versus a fine. It was, continuation of, the project in its entirety. It wasn't, a dollar decision. We held a task force meeting last week with I'm not sure if UF members were on there, DPW members were on there, CII, and when this discussion came up and we heard not to remove the tree, we attempted to stop that from happening and reached out to our contractor Swinerton to prevent that. We had given Swinerton the directive to proceed with construction and removing it, and we attempted to stop that once we heard from the agencies. And so it was already removed, unfortunately, and just, yes, very sorry that happened. It was a mistake, and we do really regret it. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. If there are no more comments for this item, I'll close the item and make my recommendations to the director. See no other comments. This item is now closed. The fifth item on today's agenda is order number 209016. I will ask the department to make its presentation.
So 1415 Owen Street in Mission Bay. It's to consider removal, of 4 street trees with 2 replacements adjacent to 1415 Owen. 2 trees are not replaceable due to curb cuts, which will be installed, and 2 street trees located adjacent to 1455 Owen frontage of the property, and 2 street trees adjacent to 1225 Mission Bay Boulevard. And then staff approved removal and the public protested. So it's a removal of 4 with only 2 replacements. And then this is the rendering of, it's a new school. It's currently not owned by the city or SFUSD. And my understanding is it's owned by UC and it's state property. So it doesn't have a building permit, it's not subject to 806D. It will eventually be turned over to SFUSD when it's finished. So this is the rendering of the school. And these are the plans, and I can let the developer speak more to this. But then there's the Mission Boulevard side on the north, the top of the plan. I think this is the north facing. And there's 2 trees here, and there's a gate there, and the trees are in the footprint of the gate as proposed by the construction project. And same on Owen Street here, there's 2 curb cuts going in, and that's in the footprint of 2 trees individually. So the 2 trees that can't be replaced, either the appraisal or the annual fee will be assessed depending on how much the trees are worth. And then this is the construction plan. And again, I'll let the developer speak more to this, but it's the routing for the trucks and waste disposal and construction equipment. So this is how they'll be entering and exiting. And let's see. I think that's actually a Brisbane box. I think it's mislabeled in our census. I don't think it's a Tristannular right now. But it's about 15-20 inches and an 8-inch diameter tree. It probably appraises for more than our standard and lieu fee. So that will be considered when the project is before the permit's being issued. Although this tree will be replaced. So it may be the difference in the appraisal. And then let's see, this tree will also be replaced. And it's much more feasible. Let's see, this is a 9-inch diameter tree. So again, it might be the difference in the value of the tree that's getting removed and the tree that's getting replaced. And then this one, yeah, the appraised value will be assessed here. And it's a 13-inch diameter Melaleuca, and it can't be replaced because there's going to be a new curb cut and the entrance and the exit to the school. And see, that's just a picture of the notice, and like that's kind of a weird little cavity, but it's not uncommon for Melaleuca to have quirky sort of cavities that aren't really harmful to the tree. They're fairly resistant to decay. And then the second Melaleuca, fortunately, this one actually has really good structure and it can't be replaced. So it's most likely going to be the appraised value here. Most likely going to appraise for higher than our standard in lieu fee, which is $2,431. So that concludes. It's a fairly simple project. Well, it's not simple really, but the removal and replacement is fairly simple because there's no development related fee because state projects aren't subject to the building permit code. So it's basically removal for replacement of 2 and the appraised value as the difference. Yeah. So I'm looking at the plans. Yep, so that concludes 14 Owens.
Thank you, Susan. Does the property owner or project team wish to speak? Alec, good evening.
Hi. Can I be able to share my screen, please?
Sure, just one moment. I'll promote you to panelist. You will need to unmute yourself one more time. There
Perfect.
you
Can everybody
go.
hear me?
We can hear you.
Awesome. Well, my name is Alex.
I cannot see your screen yet,
Oh,
though.
shoot. There we go.
Okay, now we can see. So you'll have 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Yep. My name is Alex Zimmer. I'm a project engineer with McCarthy Building Company. So I'm applying for these tree removals on behalf of the school district. One correction I would like to make is the property is owned by SFUSD currently. Another thing, some other items of note is that 2 of the streets surrounding our site are not under San Francisco jurisdiction. They are owned by UCSF, and this is a property agreement that my superior would have to answer questions on. But outside of that, I would like to get in, kind of talk about the trees that we're going to be planting and that sort of thing. So currently we plan to remove 4 trees. 2 on Mission Bay Boulevard South, and then 2 on Owen Street. In addition to that, we plan to add over 80 trees to our site. 50 of these trees will provide canopy access to the sidewalk. And there's over 14 different species of trees that we plan to install. The 2 trees on Owen Street sit directly in front of the driveway for the school district for drop-offs for the students. And then the 2 trees on Mission Bay Boulevard South that will be replaced sit directly in front of our logistics plan. I'm now going to turn this over to my superintendent. His name is Casey. Casey, if you can raise your hand so you can speak, I can change the slides.
Casey, you can go ahead and speak. We can hear. I mean, I've given you permissions already.
Oh, Casey, if you're ready to speak, you can go ahead and speak.
I think they unmuted me.
You're good.
Yes, you're
Okay, so
unmuted.
real quick, sorry about
Right.
that.
That's okay.
So if we're looking at the screen, noon would be the top of the screen, those two trees. Over the course of the building, and we could reflect on it in a second, there's a retaining wall that gets put around three frontages, Mission Bay, 6th, and Nelson Rising. In order to install the retaining wall on 6th Street, we would then lose access to that exit and then therefore only be left with one exit on Mission Bay, which is why we need to have that gate operational through construction. And then the flow of traffic stated earlier, the two on Owen Street, the kind of light brown is the access in and out of the school. So that would be the curb cut. We're going to put a ramp and then a driveway to drop kids off and then exit at gate 5. Enter on gate 4, exit gate 5. Gate 1 would be required for the logistics of the project.
You have 40 seconds remaining. Or are you done with your presentation?
I believe we are done with our presentation. We'd love to address any and all of your concerns.
Okay, thank you. Does any member of the public or witness want to speak? Josh, go ahead.
Thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, just as a point of procedure going forward, I'm not aware of any procedure that allows certain parties the ability to make untimed presentations in the form of a rebuttal. This also allows applicants the opportunity to offer up even more facts that the public didn't have time to consider in offering public comment, which in effect denies the public its due process in the public comment portion of the meeting. So for all those reasons, I just ask that this sort of untimed rebuttal process be discontinued going forward. I'd like to point out that this is again another construction item, and we are again talking about an empty lot, and that these are sidewalks here that already exceed California building standards with healthy, mature, existing trees on them. I've not heard anything about the policy of preservation and or an adequate replacement of street trees. Trees within the school property line do not count as that. So it's nice for the kids, but it doesn't do much for the public and what we need in terms of our actual street tree canopy. And it sounds also like we're talking about taking out some trees for the ease of temporary construction needs, such as laydown sites and temporary access points, without a discussion of how could we actually preserve trees and do all of these things at once. And that's important because we're talking about building a school. I mean, we're talking about building anything, but especially important because we're talking about building a school. We're gonna have, what are we telling our kids here about our priorities? We're gonna have kids standing out here in a neighborhood with around a 6% tree canopy. And by the way, a neighborhood that has an historically low tree canopy because of redlining. But we're gonna have these kids standing out here waiting for buses, standing on these huge sidewalks with no shade because we cut down all the trees. Because we lack the ability to come up with a better construction plan to save healthy trees on a practically barren site. As a matter of fact, based on the rendering, it looks like that was kind of always the plan, to have kids just standing out in the elements while waiting for the bus. So we're cutting down all these trees in the name of the next generation, a generation that's probably gonna ask, what were we thinking, cutting down all these trees in the name, in their name, at the same time our environment was collapsing. So we need to be thinking more integrally and more innovatively than anything that we're presenting here tonight. Thank you.
Maya?
Hi, yes. This is Maya from Miller Company Landscape Architects again. I just wanted to add to this. Again, we do have a lot of trees on site, and I'm just going to speak to that. That there are, most of the times the kids are inside the schoolyard, and we have lots of tree canopies with bioswales, creeks, um, places for nature-based play structures, PE stations, which is basically promotes health and physical health and mental health. So I just wanted to let everyone know that this is adding more trees to the site than ever was. And we are very excited that we're creating a nature-based schoolyard for the kids. Thanks.
Thank you, Maya. John.
I guess everybody's missing the point. This is city money. This is bond money. This is taxpayers' money. And what you're doing here is you're taking. I see on two sides of this rendering there are no street trees, or at least where the buses are. Why, again, and for the code, you should have them every 20 feet out on the street. So there's that one issue. Then the next issue, I didn't even hear what type of school this is. Is this a grammar school, a high school, a mid school? What kind of school? So that also would depend on what you're doing at the site. I don't see a parking for the faculty, for the parents. All I see is a school. I see what's missing is parking availability for the parents to pick up, or the parents to go to the school for whatever reason. And other entities that go to, do things for the school. You have lunch program, go down a list of things that go on at a school. I see a lot of things sort of missing here, and then saying that you're putting in trees, but the trees, majority of the trees are inside the footprint. So therefore, they're not helping the trees that are being taken out. Those are street trees. We're focusing here. This is a street tree hearing, not the project footprint inside the footprint. Those trees don't count. So get your facts straight, please. Thank you.
Michael Nulty, NULTY. Again, there seems to be a misunderstanding by what this hearing's about. This hearing's about, do we remove street trees or not, and why? And what is the justification for removing these the trees that are up for removal, and whether or not we replace them. Very simple. Not to expunge on how well you did planning the school and planning it and making it look good for whoever you presented it to, and using their drawings in this presentation. But what's missing is really, again, a whole several parts where the trees are not actually there. It just baffles me that, most developments, you use, the whole perimeter has trees when you develop a project, and the elements, when it rains, how will the kids have access to the buses and whatever, because that's where you have a whole line of buses. So I assume that's where you're going to have the buses let off the kids, and they're just going to walk right into the elements, whether it's raining or windy. And that's what the purpose of trees are, is to slow down the wind and deal with the rain. So I don't know. I would just ask to go back to the drawing board and think out some of the comments that are coming to you today, and make those adjustments before this project goes forward. It just baffles me how things go amiss when you're planning something and assuming you just have carte blanche to do things, and this is the way it's going to go. And the way you have the parents having to go around in a circle to drop off, pick up and drop off the kids. I mean, you're wasting a lot of gas.
30 seconds.
Thank you.
Sharice, are there any other public comments?
I don't see any other hands at this time.
Would the department like to address any public comments? Would the property owner or developers like to address any public comments?
No.
Great. If there are no comments, no further comments for this item, I will close the item and make my recommendations to the director. This item is now closed. Are there any public comments on the items in today's agenda? If you've spoken, you will not be allowed to speak again. This is for those who might have come late or who did not have a chance to speak. If there are no more public comments, I am closing this hearing. This hearing is now closed. All right, thank you, everybody. Have